The transmissions began 3 days ago. At first, it was nothing more than a faint hiss, a whisper of white noise, barely distinguishable from the usual cosmic interference. It was easy to dismiss, to attribute it to the mundane hum of the universe. But then the pattern emerged, a sequence of waves, pulsing at frequencies that defied all known astrophysical phenomena. It was a code without an origin, a signal that seemed to mock our attempts to categorize it. On the 4th day, the telescopes detected something new, a black spot. It appeared beyond Neptune's orbit, a smudge against the star-strewn canvas of space. At first it was small, almost insignificant, a flaw in the lens perhaps, or a glitch in the imaging software. But it grew. Slowly, inexorably, it expanded, as if it were alive. Now we are here. I am Dr. Elias Kovac, Chief Astrophysicist of the Orpheon, an orbital station designed to study the unknown. For decades, I have dedicated my life to unraveling the mysteries of the cosmos, to breaking down the incomprehensible into quantifiable facts. But this defies everything I know. The black spot is growing. It is not a black hole. It is not a shadow. It is something. And worst of all, it sees us. The first sign that something was profoundly wrong came from the station's spectrographic analysis. The wave pattern was unlike anything we had ever encountered. It oscillated between rhythmic precision and utter chaos, as if it were both a message and a warning. I ran the signal through every filter, every algorithm, every database at our disposal. Pulsar emissions, black hole remnants, solar particle interference, nothing matched. The closest comparison was the infamous wow signal of 1977, a burst of radio waves that had fueled decades of speculation about extraterrestrial life. But this was different. This was clearer, sharper, more deliberate. On the 2nd day, the static changed. It was no longer just noise. It gained texture, depth, a quality that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. When we processed the transmission, the team heard it for the first time. A low, guttural resonance, a sequence of tones that seemed to intertwine in ways that were almost hypnotic. "This isn't natural," Ortega murmured. She was the station's communications engineer, her voice steady but tinged with unease. She was right. It wasn't natural. But on the 4th day, the telescopes revealed something even more terrifying. The black spot had grown. In the cold, infinite darkness of space, it expanded like a stain, drifting silently beyond Neptune's orbit. At first, we thought it might be a dense cloud of interstellar dust or a gravitational distortion field. But as the data poured in, as the calculations stacked up, the truth became undeniable. It was not reflecting light. It was not absorbing light. It was erasing it, as if the light had never existed. Now we are here, watching something that defies all known science. The team works tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of monitors, their voices hushed, as they exchange theories and hypotheses. But deep down, beneath the rationality that has always defined me, I feel it. This is not a question we were meant to ask, and whatever is out there, it is listening. A quiet dread settled over the station as the crew gathered in the observation dome, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the remaining stars. The black spot loomed larger now, an ever-expanding maw that seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. It was no longer just a void. It felt alive, sentient, as if it were watching us as intently as we were watching it. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the station's life support systems. Ortega was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "The transmissions, they didn't just stop, they were absorbed. The Signal patterns we were receiving, they're gone, but not like they were cut off. It's like they were consumed. Saito nodded, his expression grim. He'd been running simulations non-stop since the stars began to disappear. It's not just the stars, he said, pulling up a holographic map of the surrounding sector. It's space itself. The black spot isn't just devouring light or matter, it's erasing existence. The constellations aren't fading. They're being unmade. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Unmade, I repeated, my voice trembling. You're saying it's rewriting reality? Not rewriting, Saito corrected. Deleting. It's as if it's unraveling the fabric of the universe, thread by thread. And it's getting faster. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. We were scientists, explorers, trained to confront the unknown. But this was beyond anything we had ever imagined. The black spot defied every law of physics, every principle we had built our understanding of the cosmos upon. And yet, there was that lingering sense of familiarity, that inexplicable feeling that we had encountered this before in some deep, primal part of our collective memory. The voice, or whatever it was, had stopped transmitting, but its echoes lingered in our minds. I could still feel it, a low, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate in the marrow of my bones. It wasn't just sound, it was a presence, an intelligence, and it was calling to us. We need to respond, I said, breaking the silence. The words felt heavy, inevitable. We can't just sit here and watch as it consumes everything. Ortega shook her head. Respond how? We don't even know what it is. For all we know, it could be a trap, or worse. Worse? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It could be a warning, she said. A warning we're not meant to understand, Saito interjected, his voice steady but urgent. We don't have a choice. The black spot is growing exponentially. If we don't act, it won't just be the stars. It'll be us, Earth, everything. The weight of his words hung in the air. We were no longer just observers. We were participants in something far beyond our comprehension. The black spot wasn't just a phenomenon, it was a force, a harbinger of something unimaginable, and it was coming. I stepped closer to the observation window, staring into the abyss. The remaining stars flickered like dying embers, their light, struggling against the encroaching darkness. And then, as if in response to my gaze, the black spot shifted. It wasn't a movement in the physical sense. It was something deeper, more profound. It was as if the void itself had turned its attention toward us. The sense of recognition surged within me, stronger than ever. It wasn't just a call anymore. It was a summons. And I knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that we had already entered, not with words or signals, but with something far more primal. Something that had been buried in the depths of our consciousness since the dawn of humanity. We need to go, I said, turning to face the crew. Not just to study it, to confront it, to understand what it wants. Ortega and Saito exchanged. A long look, then nodded. There was no other option. The black spot wasn't just a threat, it was a revelation. And we were already a part of it, whether we wanted to be or not. As we prepared the station's shuttle for departure, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into the unknown not as explorers, but as something else entirely. The black spot had chosen us, and whatever lay beyond its impenetrable darkness, we would face it together. The stars continued to vanish, one by one, as we set our course toward the void. The universe was unraveling, and we were hurtling toward the art of the mystery. Whatever awaited us, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, everything changed. The transmissions stopped abruptly. The constant static that had haunted us for days was severed, as if an invisible thread had been cut in the fabric of space. The monitoring screens flickered, froze for a moment, then stabilized in absolute electronic silence. For a fleeting second, I felt relief, like waking from a nightmare, expecting the horror to dissolve in the light of day. But then, the stars began to disappear. At first, it was just one. A lone star on the edge of our field of view vanished in the blink of an eye. I thought I was imagining it, a trick of exhaustion. Then another vanished, and another, and another. I turned to Ortega. She saw it too. We all did. I rushed to the observation dome, my boots barely catching traction in the artificial gravity. My hands gripped the railing as my eyes searched the void. The constellations were vanishing. Not dimming, not fading behind clouds of interstellar dust or collapsing into the maw of a black hole. They were simply gone, as if they had never existed at all. This can't be happening, Ortega whispered, her voice unsteady. Her breath hitched as she stared into the abyss, the dying glow of the remaining stars reflecting in her wide, unblinking eyes. Stars don't just... She stopped. Her expression twisted into something raw and primal, a terror too vast to name. Behind us, the monitors flickered uncontrollably. Corrupted data scrolled across the screens in frantic, shifting lines. Unstable, graphs trembled like a pulse in arrhythmia. Readings surged and collapsed in chaotic waves, as though the instruments themselves were afraid. Then the image stabilized, and we saw it. Not just the black void, something within it. At first, it was only movement, faint, shifting shadows, like an optical illusion at the edge of perception. But as we adjusted the contrast, the image sharpened. Tendrils, not of flesh, not of matter, tendrils of absence, rifts in reality itself, slithering through the vacuum, twisting with an intelligence beyond comprehension. They stretched outward, their sinuous forms distorting space like fractures in a fragile pane of glass. The void wasn't just there. It was elsewhere, projecting its presence beyond the limits of our understanding. A chill settled deep in my bones. Every instinct in me recoiled, every nerve screaming in silent terror, because now I understood the feeling that had stalked me since the first transmission. That suffocating sense of being watched. It wasn't paranoia. The black spot was not just a cosmic phenomenon, it was an eye, and it was watching us. The silence that followed the appearance of the shapes inside the black spot was almost worse than the horror of seeing them. A suffocating stillness, as if the universe itself had paused to watch what was about to unfold. Ortega stood frozen, her eyes locked onto the monitors, lips slightly parted. She wasn't blinking. Her breathing was shallow. It was as if something vast and unseen had reached into her mind, had unraveled some fundamental part of her that none of us could comprehend. Then she began to whisper. Soft at first, a dry, hoarse murmur barely distinguishable from the background hum of the station's ventilation systems. But as the seconds passed, her voice gained weight, substance. The words scraped against my ears, slow and deliberate, spoken in a voice that didn't sound entirely her own. He sees, he knows, he is coming. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Saito's fingers hovered over the control panel, his eyes darting between the flickering monitors and Ortega's still unnatural posture. Ortega. I called, stepping toward her. She didn't respond. He sees, he knows, he is coming. I reached for her shoulder. The moment my fingers touched the fabric of her jumpsuit, she turned, and I saw. Her eyes were black, not dark, not shadowed. Empty, like twin wells of nothingness, the color stripped away, leaving only a raw, consuming void. There was no iris, no sclera, just absence, pure and absolute. And as I stared, I felt something staring back. A depth, beyond sanity. The void was inside her now, my stomach clenched. A cold sweat broke out across my skin. I should have recoiled, should have turned away. But I couldn't. The longer I looked, the more I felt myself slipping. My thoughts unraveling, my consciousness bleeding into some formless infinity. Ortega's lips moved again. Only this time, the sound wasn't just sound. It was something deeper, something that vibrated in the marrow of my bones, resonating in a place beyond understanding. He sees, he knows, he is coming. Then the alarm screamed. The station shuddered violently, lights flickered, monitors convulsed with corrupted data. The artificial gravity wavered for a split second before the stabilizers compensated. I tore my gaze from Ortega and stumbled toward the control panel. The main display was a storm of distorted readings, information scrolling too fast for the eye to follow. The engines were offline, power levels fluctuated wildly. Systems we hadn't even accessed were activating and deactivating at random. The Orpheon was moving, but not under our control. A deep, guttural hum reverberated through the station's metal frame, a sound too vast to be coming from the machinery. It was coming from outside. From it, we were being pulled, dragged, sucked toward the black spot. Saito cursed, slamming commands into the terminal. Nothing responded. The thrusters refused to fire. Emergency overrides were locked out. The station was accelerating toward the abyss, swallowed inch by inch into a darkness that had no end. I turned to Ortega. She wasn't afraid. She was smiling, an empty, distant smile, soft and almost reverent, as if she were beholding something divine. Ortega, I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. She tilted her head slightly, those things in her sockets gleaming with a lightless, impossible depth. "He invites us," she said. And then I understood. The signal was never a mistake, never a mystery. To be solved, it was an invitation, and now we had answered. The Orpheon trembled. The station's structure groaned, metal twisting under forces beyond physics. The black spot loomed ahead, no longer just a void, but something alive, its undulating tendrils of absence curling and writhing, devouring the last shreds of starlight. We were at the event horizon of something far worse than a black hole. Not a singularity, not a gravitational collapse, a threshold, and we were crossing it. The main viewport shattered as reality itself distorted. A shrieking, voiceless sound filled my head, something neither organic nor mechanical, something that was not meant to be heard. I staggered, clutching my skull as my thoughts unraveled like threads pulled from an ancient tapestry. Time fragmented. I saw myself from the outside. I saw Ortega as she truly was, a hollowed-out husk, her body still here, but herself elsewhere, stretching across dimensions like a whisper lost in the wind. I saw the crew screaming. I saw Saito's body convulsing as the void touched him, his skin peeling away like paper in a storm, revealing nothing beneath. No blood, no muscle, no bone, just absence, a gap in existence where a man had once been. I felt my feet leave the ground, falling, not through space but through meaning, through the framework of reality itself. The black spot consumed everything, the Orpheon ceased to exist, and yet I remained. There was no station, no crew, no stars, only silence, only dark. And yet I was aware I could not move. I had no body, I had no breath, but I was. And in that terrible moment, I finally understood. The universe had never been empty. The void between the stars was not a void at all. It was a mind, a presence older than time, older than form, older than the very concept of existence. And now I was part of it. Or maybe I always had been. Maybe we all were. Tiny fragments of awareness, drifting in a vast ocean of thought. Fleeting sparks in an infinite intelligence that had been waiting, watching, whispering across the cosmos since before the first atom had formed. The signal was never a transmission, it was a thought, and we were never meant to answer. I felt it then, something shifting, a new awareness unfolding around me, within me, and for the first time I realized I was not being invited, I was being awakened.